everyone, and welcome back to Brown Coat Reviews. I'm your host, Laura, and I'm here with my favorite co-host, my husband, Scott. Now, we are here to talk about a brand new series, Nocterra, and I purposefully waited on this video. Now, I was going to post it as soon as issue number 1 was released, but I changed my mind. I liked issue number 1, but I was like, nah, I need a little bit more information, and then we waited for issue number 2 to be released. And I was like, okay, now we can definitely talk about it. But I also dragged him kicking and screaming back on camera. You can tell he's so shy. Because I wanted to have more than just my perspective on this series. So, start with the essentials, which is this series is written by Scott Snyder. For those of you that do not remember or do not know the name Scott Snyder, of course, I know. Everyone in comic books should know Scott Snyder, but in case...
If you're new.
Exactly. New people. Scott Snyder, of course, did the Batman Court of Owls. He worked on... This is Dark Knight's Metal, and he, of course, worked on the whole Death Metal series. My favorite, which is Witches.
Witches.
Oh, love this series.
I just love it when you say that. Witches.
Yes. If you have not watched my video about my Something is Killing the Children's Withdrawals, that's where I talk about this series and talk more in depth about how much I love Scott Snyder. So, check it out. The art is done by Tonydaniel, who of course did the Superman Wonder Woman series. And, very interestingly, so Scott and I are fans of the TV series Face Off, which was on Sci-Fi for... gosh, God only knows how long. It's a reality show where it's the special effects artists that create all the prosthetics and kind of create our favorite monsters, heroes, fantasy, sci-fi characters, you name it.
Yeah.
In whether it's TV or film. So it's a competition series, starts with, I think it's like 10 people, and then you eventually obviously have a winner.
Yeah.
So in 2013... one of the issues had a special because of the San Diego Comic-Con. So it was Tony Daniel, Jim Lee, and...
Dan Didio.
Dan Didio.
Yeah.
And they basically all got to be consultants for that particular episode where they asked the contestants to create a unique superhero that would then be featured in the 2013 run of Justice League Dark, issue number 16. So if you have a copy of it, go check it out because that superhero was created thanks to... some of Tony Daniel, Jim Lee's, and Dan Didio's input from Face Off.
Infernal Core was the guy's name, I believe.
Yes. So.
Speaking of art, here's some of the interiors, though, on issue 1. That's just a gorgeous scene there.
Yeah. You can't deny the artwork on this series. So, Tony Daniel did a fabulous job. So, Nocterra, of course, is a series where we don't know everything. All we do know is that there is a lack of light in this world. Every other creature, unless the main characters are all trying to stay within kind of light sources of like flashlights and things like that. There's no sun. It could be blocked or it could be dead. Who knows? All we know is that you cannot get solar power anymore. So not only is everything in darkness, you now have creatures that are in the darkness as well. So they'll call those creatures shades. Yes. And those creatures could be something as small as like a squirrel that then transforms, or it could be a human being that then transforms into one of these shades. They have not told us yet how this process starts. All we know is that there are a couple cures that at least can either reduce the effects or possibly cure you from this, if you catch it early enough, is, you can go through dialysis, or there's a special type of solar lamp that may be able to reverse the effects. So
here's an example of some shades.
Yeah, I mean, look at those.
So the main character, though, is Val Riggs, and we come to find out that she was adopted into a family. She has an adopted brother named Emery, the first issue, she kind of gives a little bit of her backstory. It's kind of themed around where were you when it, in fact, yeah, there you go. Where were you that morning? As in, where were you the morning that it went dark? Yes. She gives a little of her backstory. It was interesting. Didn't really draw me in to where I really was vested in what happens to her next. But part of that story is that when the light disappears, the more prolonged period that you are in complete darkness, regardless of what you are, if you're a living thing, so it could be animal, human, doesn't matter, you're transformed. Biological transformation takes place to turn you into one of these shades. There are like steps as you begin suffering from lack of light, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, one of the last steps is if your gums start turning black, you're pretty much well on the way. And the last hope you have is to have like a solar lamp, one of these special things that Laura was talking about for treatment. So Val's character is what they refer to as a ferryman. Okay. So ferrymen in Nocterra's world are what we would probably refer to in today's world as truck drivers.
Yeah.
But their job is to go from point to point, whatever remaining places had light sources when the sun disappears or does whatever it does, become outposts. And so they'll go out and pick up people and move them from one outpost to the next, or move supplies, or find people out on the wastelands and bring them to the outpost. It just depends on what their cargo, is, or what their need is. But she is a ferryman. Sounds like her brother is a technical advisor. Like he's not in the truck, but he's in her headset talking to her, kind of helping her map out routes and stuff like that. The idea of the light being a commodity is kind of cool to me too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, these ferrymen are out there doing this job, and instead of getting paid, and obviously cash means nothing in this world, but bartering for like food or water or things that you might think you would need, they could do that, but they can also barter for like a battery charger, like to go and plug in a lamp for treatment or for light source. There's this kind of neat aspect to it though, where light suddenly is not just life-saving, but it's a commodity. If you had batteries that were working and a flashlight, you had something worth a lot to other people that without it. That concept kind of blew my mind. So
some of the things that I really like about the series, it does remind me a little bit of like Waterworld, Mad Max, where you're in a completely different world. Everything has changed.
The one with Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, where they've got to be really quiet because the monsters in that movie come after you if you make noise.
Yes, so it's like
reminded me of that.
It's like it's our world, but something has changed, and now everything is completely different. Our priorities have had to change, and we're, of course, just like all the other stories, you're on some sort of adventure. We are introduced to two other characters in Val and Emery's life, who allege that they either know how to bring back the light, but on like a permanent basis, no longer worrying about batteries and jumping from outpost to outpost, but everyone will be protected by some sort of light. Don't know if it's going to be the sun, doesn't matter. There would be protection for everyone, which obviously is very unique. It is possible that the people who are making this allegation are lying, that there's no hint of truth to it, that they just want passage to get to the next place. It's also possible that there is that one little sprig of hope that maybe Val could not just save, herself and her brother from this, but what if they could change the world? And that's...
Sorry. We have had an activation of the Greyhound alert system. Apparently something very, very enticing going on downstairs, and every Greyhound has now left the building.
So if you ever hear jingling going on in the background of a video,
don't panic. Greyhound alert system's on it.
I'm so sorry. I try and keep them as quiet as humanly possible, but I think they wait until I hit the record button, and then suddenly they got a scratch. Yeah. But anyways.
Meanwhile.
Basically, like I said, they're on this adventure, and I mean, the concept is really interesting.
Concept's interesting. Art's very cool.
Yeah.
What really got me in, because end of issue 1, I was with Laura. I'm like, it needs to improve, or there needs to be something else in the storyline for me to be really interested. Issue 2, I got it. It's the introduction of an antagonist, Blacktop Bill. Now, first of all, look at those 2-page panels. Is that not cool? Like, that reminded me of something I wish I had the talent to draw when I
Oh
was
my
a
gosh,
kid.
yeah.
I mean, like, those are the cars I drove. That was the truck that I wanted to draw. He is terrifying. He's just like the complete absence of light or color. There's nothing but black there. That turned it from
So
a adventure in the world of post-apocalyptic and I don't know what's happening and there's scary monsters and oh no, to now there's an possibly good but maybe a tinge of bad and a probably bad but could be a tinge of good or good reasons opponents going at it, and I'm like, now I'm in. Now I want to know what's happening next.
So in the first one, when Val was first introduced, she was a very interesting character. It was a very interesting, change to our world. I liked the relationship between her and Emery, but that was about it. I wasn't kind of like really invested, like cheering on the character. As soon as the antagonist comes in, suddenly you see another side of Val. So Val as a character, I think the more she's kind of facing these different challenges, the more intriguing she gets to me. So
you learn more about her motivations, and that
yeah.
endeared her more, or made me more interested in her as well as a character. You learn more about, her background in certain ways. So yeah, they layer it very well. They don't give it all the way at the front.
And I will say, listen, the end of this one, I personally was like, ooh, do I want issue 2, or am I willing to just kind of drop this for the 50,000 other titles that are in our reading list? And I almost dropped it, but honestly, I hadn't read the first one when it was already saying, hey, do you want to pre-order issue number 2? And I already clicked that I wanted to pre-order it. So I was like, well, it's coming one way or another. It's going to be on our pull list. So I was like, well, if we're going to be pre-ordering it, it's going to be in the pull box, then I'm going to read it. Went ahead, finished this one unless it was good but not great. Finished this one and I was like, oh heck yes, I am in, and now it will stay in the pull box. And I'm hoping right now, I said it's a great adventure story, but I think that the more that they build the characters, the higher it's going to go on our priority list of series that must be read the night that we receive it. And I think it has all the potential for that.
Yeah, it's possible.
The only other thing I wanted to show, so on the cover, when I saw it the first time, I mean, these look like wings, and I mean, she looks really cool. We've got the flare, and then we've got this kind of weird, it's almost like a little halo on her head. So she does not have wings, even though that'd be really cool if she did. I believe these are meant to be some of the shade creatures in the background, and this is her light source. So it's almost like a flashlight that she wears on her head. You can also see in this one, she's kind of like Catwoman. She's got it pulled up here, and then she puts it face first when she's defending. But as I said, whether she's with weapons, whether she has her flares, one way or another, she is taking on these cool bad guys.
This is one of my favorite ones. So you can get a little bit better depiction of it there. What she looks like in the combat mode, I guess you'd say, with all the light behind her. But yeah, definitely the artwork does not disappoint. So no. if the story is interesting enough to you to where you're not like, I'll never pick that up again, the artwork will keep you coming back until the story builds upon itself a little more, I think, based on the first 2 issues. Yeah. I'm in. If it gets, if it continues the way that it is, we'll definitely be reading it more.
The only other thing I did want to say, so
big shout out too to him about putting all that stuff in there about the readers, right?
Exactly. So Scott Snyder, one of the things I mentioned about in my Witches book is that at the end of the series, he always kind of does this nice little letter, and sometimes it will be a thank you to the fans. Sometimes it will be a explanation of some of the art, some of the concepts, some really, really cool sort of insights. And for this particular series, he actually does give a very specific shout out and thanks to all the fans who are reading this series. Because, like I said, we all know Scott Snyder from DC titles. And, I mean, he could stay with Batman forever. We would all be very, very happy. But he doesn't have to go to an independent title like Image Comics to make his money, to make his fortune, or to do a great job. I think it's a great risk for him to do it, but I think he acknowledges that, and he believes enough in this series that that's why he was willing to do it. And I think that speaks volumes also for where the series is going. Because if he even admits, he's like, it is a risk to create a brand new series. So he's taking the risk, and he's thrilled to have us along the way. But he's also kind of teased and said there are good things to come. So if you get these, just make sure you take the time to read the letters at the back. I said this is just a really cool little insight and extra edition that comes from Scott Snyder. Let us know down in the comments. Have you read Nocterra? Have you considered reading it? Or are you caught up like we are and you are dying for issue number 3? What did you think? And how do you think it compared, whether it's with other Scott Snyder titles or other titles similar to this, where we are here in the United States, we are in our current world, modern day times, but something catastrophic has happened and now our world has changed. And you have something going bump in the dark. Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we have amazing content coming. And you're not going to want to miss any of the upcoming videos here on Browncoat Reviews. I'm your host, Laura. This is my husband, Scott. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon.